Welcome to episode 15 of the Norton Nemesis 1500cc V8 rebuild. And in this episode, I'm going to be fitting the fuel injection system, the petrol tank, and doing a few other little jobs. And then I'll push it out in the garden and see if it starts in the bike. With the engine back in the frame and the bike up on its wheels, I've decided now to fit the fuel injection system. So the first thing I'm going to do is fit the magnesium airbox to the engine. The airbox is made from magnesium and is showing signs of corrosion underneath, so I think I'll deal with this first by giving it a gentle wire brush and taking it outside and giving it a spray with some satin black. I'm using a small stainless steel wire brush for this job. It works just perfect at removing the corrosion. I then warm the casting up in preparation for the painting. If it's a warm surface, the paint sticks and dries quicker. With the airbox casting nicely warm, I take it outside in the garden to spray. The satin black paint covers nicely and is a good match to the original colour. I feel I'm being watched, so I glance across the garden and there's a pigeon in the drinking water with his wing up in the air. Really strange. With the painting complete, I take it across and put it in my barbecue to bake it off nice and dry. This works just perfect for the job and fits nicely. I leave it for a couple of minutes and take it back out into the garage. There's some strange cutouts underneath the casting which I can't work out why it's done, because the engine doesn't show any signs of any raised protrusions by the inlet ports, but half of them are cut out and half of them aren't, which is really strange, but yeah, it should work okay. When I took the engine apart, there was no gaskets at this joint, just a thin smear of sealer. With the sealer applied, I lift the airbox up and wriggle it into the engine. It's quite a tight fit to get down past the frame tubes, but it goes in eventually and lines up nicely with the inlet ports and is held in place with 3 screws per port. 24 screws. And here you can see the rotary tube throttles working. With the airbox screws secured tightly, I can now offer up the cover which holds the injectors. There are 8 injectors pointing down at the inlet ports about 2 inches above, and they squirt fuel directly into the inlet port. With the airbox cover resting in place, you can see this huge cutout at the back, which is really strange, but that's where they fitted the battery. It's not ideal to have the battery in the airbox, so I'm going to relocate that somewhere else on the bike and make an aluminium cover to cover up the hole. And here it is, a bit of aluminium bent to shape, held in place with 2 screws and a bit of sealer, and I can put, but all the wires come out of this slot here from the injectors to the computer, which will be fitting later on. I've already started doing some of the wiring. I've fitted the ignition switch with the power on light. and also an override switch for the fans, because I fitted twin electric fans now from a Suzuki SV650 with a thermostatic switch. So now when you put the fans on, you can put paper in front of the radiators and they're held in place with a suction. This will really help to cool the engine, especially when going slow. When you turn the ignition off, the paper drops away. As this was a road-going machine, allegedly, I thought I'd get the lights working and the horn. Before I can proceed any further with the electrics, I need to fit the exhaust. I was going to make a new exhaust system complete, but I decided to use the original system because it's part of the bike's history and it shows how it was originally made. And it actually works, so it's functionally okay. So I just cleaned it up a little bit. But I'm going to replace these really heavy-duty exhaust clamps for some nice stainless steel Mikador clamps. These are so much lighter and grip much tighter and make a gas-tight seal. The exhaust system is made in several pieces and it slots together nicely, hugging the engine quite tight. It's quite difficult to fit, especially getting all the clamps to line up nicely. I got there in the end. You have to give it a wriggle and a wiggle to make it all fit, to get it in the right place, because the exhaust goes up through the swinging arm through a hole and it has to be right in the middle, otherwise it'll rub. With all the pieces fitted, I go around gradually tightening up the screws to make sure the clamps are tight. And here you can see it's all fitted, with the pipe coming up through the swinging arm and out to the back of the bike. This is a totally straight through system, which is not ideal for road use, but it sounds really amazing. With the exhaust system fitted, I can now fit an aluminium plate that goes over the engine to hold the fuel tank and all the electrical components like the coils and the transducers and sensors. This bolts in place with several screws. The aluminium sheet also acts as a heat shield and it has some heat-resistant material stuck to the underside. So now I can start looking at all the other components to fit. So I can start by fitting the coil packs. With the coil packs fitted, I can now connect up the spark plug leads, making sure I connected the correct cylinder to the correct stub on the coil pack. I numbered these with a pen before I removed them. When I modified the coolant system routing with pipework, I fitted the coolant temperature sensor at the rear of the cylinder head, which is the hottest point of the engine. The next thing to fit is the aluminium fuel tank. But before I can do this, I need to repair some threads in the top. The fairing cover, which is carbon fibre, clamps down over the tank and lines up not quite right, so it had to be adjusted at the factory by the looks of things. It's been moved forward about 10 millimetres with various adapter plates, but all the threads are really poor, so I'm going to repair all these threads with some helicoils first, otherwise we're going to get leaks. And this is the worst thread, the screw just pushes straight in. The damaged threads are quite easy to repair using helicoil thread inserts. These are basically like wire springs that screw into an oversized thread to return the thread to its correct size in the centre for the screw. So the first thing you do is drill out the damaged thread with the oversized drill that's supplied in the kit. This makes the hole the correct size for the helicoil tap. I use the helicoil tap to cut the new thread, making sure that I make it square to the surface. There we go, that's all ready for the helicoil insert to be wound in. If you put the insert onto a little rod with a slit in the end, it acts like a driver for driving it in. As you screw it in, it shrinks it slightly so it goes into the thread nicely. And when you try to return it backwards, it goes really, really tight and locks in place. And then the last thing you do is break off the little tang. There we go. That's that thread repaired perfectly. And that will be now much stronger than it was originally. With the thread repaired, I return all the parts back to the box for next time. It's always useful to keep them in their original box because you can see what you've got. And also that it's all there and there's no parts missing. I then use a flat file to gently remove any spurs and sharp edges from the top sealing surface of the petrol tank, and also the adapter plate, making sure it's all flat and smooth. With the tank flat, I try the adapter ring up against the surface and you can see how wobbly it is. So I need to remove the burrs from the back of that adapter plate to make it sit nice and smoothly on the tank. Otherwise we're going to get leaks. That's better, that fits really nice now. The carbon fibre bodywork fits over the tank, and then this aluminium ring fits on top, and it's all screwed down with 6 screws, holding it all in place nicely. And then finally the petrol cap goes on top. With the tank repairs complete, I blow it out with an airline to remove any particles that might have dropped down inside, then decide to give it a nice clean with some metal polish to make it all shiny. It's always nice to make it look nice, even though you can't see it underneath the covers, but you know it's nice underneath, and that's what's important. The strange thing is this tank only holds just over 1 gallon of petrol, so it wouldn't go very far, because I estimate this bike will do about 20 miles to the gallon, so it's probably got a 20-mile range. The petrol tank is now ready to fit to the bike. It lowers down into a gap behind the coils and is held in place with 4 screws. I can hear some noise going on in the kitchen, so I have to go and investigate, see what's going on. And Tracy's making some more cakes. I think they're cakes, but perhaps they're something else. No, they're ginger nuts. She's making ginger nuts. These are going to be so amazing. I really like ginger nuts. So she puts the ingredients into the mixer. Brown sugar. Gives it a good whisk up with some flour. Just a little bit. Then she adds a dribble of golden syrup from a jar. Lets it dribble in nicely to exactly 1 spoonful. Quite mesmerising watching it form its way around in circles. Then it flows completely flat. Drops it down into the mix and then whisks this all up into a little smooth paste. She has to use a fork to do this part because it's quite difficult to do. You've got to make it into like a paste. It looks very lumpy. I can't imagine it ever going smooth, but it does eventually. Then she uses her hand to knead it into little balls. These little balls are going to become biscuits. I guess when they heat up, they all flop down flat on the tin. Oh, no, she gives them a little squash with a spoon first to help them on their way. This gives them little dimples in the centre. And when they go in the oven, they have to stay there for about 20 minutes cooking. They all come out nice and flat. And when they come out, they look just amazing, just like real biscuits. I'm quite impressed, really. Although they're still hot and I'm under strict instructions not to try one yet until they cool down, I pinch one and take it out in the garage. It was so nice. With the biscuits eaten, I just look at the front of the Norton and notice that the front mudguard doesn't line up on both sides, which is really annoying. There must be a casting defect or something, but I can't be having that. So I get my file out and start filing away to blend it in, try and make it a bit smoother. I can't get it perfect, but I can certainly improve on it. I can get the front to line up perfect and be really smooth, but the top I can't do, because if I do it too much, it'll make it very thin, which would be bad. So I just use a bit of my Abranet cloth now to clean it up and make it smooth, followed by a bit of metal polish, and that's that job done. It looks a lot better. Even Charlie Weaver's impressed. There we go. That's much better. The next thing to tackle is the wiring loom for the ECU to control the electronic ignition and the fuel injection. This is from an Aston Martin V8. It's about 10 foot long. So what I have to do is roll it up and hide it under the petrol tank and behind the covers if I can. It's how it was when it was originally made, so I should be able to put it back as it was. I don't really want to cut it and rejoin the connectors because there's a chance of getting it wrong and making a mistake, and there's so many wires. So I'll just leave it as it was. The main battery for the bike was glued to the underside of the rear fairing, which is not ideal. So the first thing I'm going to do is remove this bracket so I can mount the battery onto the bike. And here you can see the monocoque in its full glory. It's a one-piece unit with the tail fin, seat and tank cover all in one, made out of carbon fibre. I made a bracket to mount the battery behind the ECU, fitted all the wiring to the bike, and I had to take the petrol tank off because it was in the way, but we can refit that again in a minute. And then we fitted all the new fuses at the top and some new wiring. So now I can refit the tank, tucking all the wiring in behind it underneath. I'm really pleased how I managed to hide most of the wiring. It was quite a job, but I got there in the end, and now it looks reasonably good. This lead here is an interface lead for connecting the bike's ECU to a laptop. If anyone out there's got a lead that connects with this, please let me know in the comments, because I've got no way of connecting it to a laptop at the moment. I just hope the base map is okay and it runs. The next thing I did was connect up all the fuel pressurised system for the fuel injectors from the fuel tank. I also fitted a pressure gauge so I can adjust the regulator to get the optimum pressure. The next thing I want to look at is getting the rev counter to work, because the original rev counter is obsolete now. The battery's gone dry inside and it can't be replaced easily. So I rang the company up and they sent me a new one, which is vastly improved, but it looks basically the same, which is nice, so you won't be able to tell much when it's on the bike. The only difference I can see is that the needle isn't yellow, it's white, but that's okay. These rev counters are really nice because they're self-contained with a lithium-ion battery that lasts about 12 months apparently of use, so it should be fine. When you press that little button in, it gives you a voltage reading. If it goes to the 14, it's fully charged, which this one does, so that's really good. When the battery goes flat, you just change the battery, which is much better than the old system. So I took it out in the garden to try it out on my lawnmower to make sure that it works. This is a 4-stroke lawnmower that fires on wasted spark, which is perfect to test it. So I connect up the lead, pull start the lawnmower, put the lead on the spark plug lead by hand. As you bring it nearer to the lead, the rev counter starts to work. I look up and the pigeon doesn't approve of the noise and looks away. And here it is fitted to the bike. You can get your finger under the dash to operate the battery test mode, like that, and it's still 14, so that's good. And the signal wires run down the side of the frame away from the main loom and is attached to one of the spark plug leads with some zip ties. The next thing I'm going to do is top up the coolant system with coolant. This is quite a lengthy process, but what's really good, I've got an electric water pump now, so I can pump the water around and get all the bubbles out. It's now time to top up the tank with some fuel. I looked down and noticed that the gauge still reading 20 psi after about an hour when I tested the pressure originally. So that's really good. So I put in drop more fuel to make sure I got enough to run the engine. I now push the bike out into the garden for its very first start-up as a whole bike. But will it go? The clicking sound is the chain rubbing over a guide wheel on the swinging arm. This stops when you sit on the bike. The bike seems really heavy to push. It's a bit like my Pan-European in weight, but I'll weigh it later and find out. So here's the moment of truth. I put on the ignition, put on the kill switch, pull in the clutch and hit the start button. It started straight up. I'm really pleased, but it's so loud. I tried to put a couple of silencers on the back just to see if it would be quieter, but it disapproved and blew straight off. Well, I'm really pleased for its first startup. It started straight away. That's the beauty of fuel injection. It squirts fuel straight down the inlet ports. But now I need to take it somewhere where I can make a lot of noise, set the fuel pressure regulator up and play with the throttle position sensor. That's all I can do with this, with the computer system as it is. Hopefully it'll be okay. Then take it somewhere where I can ride it and give it a bit of a run. I had a good look around the bike, and I don't seem to have any coolant leaks or oil leaks, which is a really good sign, although it hasn't run much. But if it's going to leak, it's going to leak straight away. Well, after such a good result, I think it's time to go inside for a nice cup of tea and a ginger nut biscuit. Well, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all soon in the next video.